cerco queste persone, le persone che non hanno tempo da perdere con le cose facili, le persone che hanno sempre qualcosa dentro negli occhi, quelle persone che mi dicono dai proviamoci, va bene, non sono sicuro che può funzionare, però facciamolo.
Nel momento in cui parti a fare un progetto nuovo è tutto un ma come lo facciamo?
Stefano abitava e abita in una frazione di un paese che si chiama Besozzo, dove sono praticamente tutti binda, c'erano circa 70 binda. Mi ricorderò sempre che ho preso l'elenco telefonico, ho preso un binda e ho detto comincio da qui, me li segno. Accade che feci una telefonata, potevo prendere chiunque, rispose lui.
Era una sera, suona il telefono, numero sconosciuto.
Gli dissi Stefano, ti va di intraprendere con me lo spirito imprenditoriale?
Sai che c'è? Io ci provo. Anche
lui lavorava nella multinazionale da cui venivo io, no? Ci stava stretto questa comfort zone.
Forse è l'occasione che aspettavo.
C'era un'affinità elettiva, c'era qualcosa che lui voleva e che io volevo e che insieme avremmo potuto portarci a casa assieme.
Quando l'ho detto a mia mamma, è rimasta lì un attimo in silenzio, mi ha guardato e mi fa «Tite se mat, le mie al momento». Non era il momento, però sono 27 anni che siamo in ballo. Quindi il momento probabilmente te lo devi costruire tu. Con un po' di lucida follia devi cercartelo il momento e devi crederci.
Io ho spirito d'avventura e lui il coraggio di seguirmi. E quindi io sono l'esploratore. Lui è, diciamo così, il punto su cui tornare. Siamo complementari in questo senso, la curiosità, l'intelligenza, eccetera, diciamo così, la pasta, la qualità del legno che abbiamo sempre condiviso.
Faccio sempre l'esempio del mio gatto, no? Che comunque sia, lui è paurosissimo, però se c'è una cosa lui deve andare a vederla. Lui piano piano si avvicina, però lui deve curiosare, deve vedere che cos'è. Poi magari al primo rumore scappa, però... È un po', diciamo, quello che mi ha sempre guidato. La curiosità ti porta ad andare a vedere la cosa che non c'è.
Vedo una cosa strana, la vado a cercare, non mi capita, non me ne sto mai sulla strada maestra. Anche quando vado in moto non si sa dove si va, non si sa quando si ritorna.
È chiaro che se tu cerchi di vedere subito tutti i problemi non partirai mai.
Quello che ti porti a casa è l'imprevisto. Parecchi miei amici vogliono venire con me perché succede sempre qualcosa, no? Che bella quella volta che è successo che si è rotta la moto e siamo rimasti sotto le stelle, abbiamo dovuto dormire sotto la moto. Sento bollire il sangue, no? Sento che lì c'è qualche cosa di energia. Ecco, forse energia è la cosa che vado cercando. Lo spirito di avventura è quello che mi è rimasto.
Hello everyone, this is Laura Mimini. I'm an Italian industrial designer and I came to China, specifically Foshan, about 4 years ago. Nowadays, I'm the co-founder and design director of D2P, Design to Product, together with my Chinese partner, Wang Mang. The goal of my company is to provide European and especially Italian design services to Chinese and international clients. The connection with the Italian and European culture is very important for us. D2P has got many years of experiences in several industries like electrical appliances, furniture, sport and fitness, baby care and so on. That's why our team of designers are mostly based in Italy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another fascinating talk from IDES Awards. Today is a very exciting day. We have somebody, a very special guest. But before we get started, we want to give thanks to important partners that we have in this contest and that are helping us to grow and become even more open wide for everybody around the world, and to give opportunities to people that are not only part of the design world but outside of the design world, for students and young professionals that are up and coming and learning how to actually design in this world. First, we want to give a thanks to Design Wanted, D2P, Studio Volpi, Casina, Kishot, and more importantly, Young Designers India, which is taking the next step, is a very important person from this sponsor, which is Sushant Vohra. He will be joining us tonight to be able to give us a talk about the future of design and how this special letter to designers that he will explain, and he will guide us through this whole talk. We want to welcome him, and he is with us now. Welcome, Sushant. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Hello?
Hey, can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry
Awesome.
about that.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
No, you're welcome, and thank you for joining us today. It's a real pleasure for us to have you here. I know today is going to be a very exciting talk with you. But before we get started a little bit more into the actual topic, could you tell us a little bit about you and what you do, and what has been your whole career like? Give us a little intro into yourself and your life.
Yeah, for sure. So traditionally, I was trained as an industrial designer, and I think the reason I went into industrial design is because I was good at sketching. I could build a lot of things with craft paper and cardboard and whatnot, and industrial design seemed like the right next step to make something of value from that. So I studied in India, 5 years of industrial design studies. Then through that journey, I was exposed to all different types of design as well. A little bit of UX, a little bit of transportation. Then of course there's things like digital design, animation, renderings, things like that. But early on in my career, I was exposed to the actual practice of design through internships. So I went to Hong Kong to work at a company called Steelcase, which is the biggest office furniture manufacturer in the world. So they had an office in Hong Kong, which was a good sort of teaser trailer for me at the start of my career. Then I moved to Europe to work at Kiska. Kiska is another design agency, pretty large by design agency standards, around 200 people. They do a lot of transportation, sports goods, and things like experiential design, which is really interesting to me at that point. And then I moved to the US, specifically in the Bay Area, to start designing at Astro Studios. And I spent a few years there. I did a little bit of freelance in the middle, so I got exposure to sort of handling a small business of sorts, which is really interesting. And then more recently, I'm now based in Seattle. I work at a company called Teague. Still an industrial designer. Still really enjoy making products and experiences. Very tied closely to brand and storytelling, which is again something that gives me a lot of excitement. Because again, I think having these varied experiences slash working in different parts of the world so gave me a good exposure to everything around design as well, which is culture, the differences in how we approach work, how we approach design.
Right.
So that's where I'm at. That's more or less the professional side of my journey. And then on the personal side, I'm a musician. I really like playing my guitar. And then other than that, I've been pretty active online, starting to look at content, starting to look at, just having a voice and presence online.
Yeah, I think it's necessary nowadays for designers to sort of get their name out there, not only in their products, but also in their actual personality, and actually mixing these sort of cool things like the music that you do and the sort of experiences that you had around the world. All these things mix up really nicely to be able to create cool products and amazing new ideas come up from all these experiences living in other places, and it's really interesting to hear that. But actually, let's go ahead and get started. If you would like, we can go ahead and start with the talk. This way, you get a little bit even more in depth into all these sort of experiences that you have, and you can tell us a little bit more about everything that's been going on with the topic that you picked today to be able to talk.
Awesome. Let's do it. Let's do it. I am good to go. Alrighty. So firstly, thanks to everyone who's watching us online on Instagram or YouTube. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I wanted to talk about the future of what being a designer looks like. And it's a topic that I've been thinking about deeply because, it's almost like I can see myself feel a bit uneasy with what's going on in the design world. And I just wanted to jot down some thoughts in a letter titled Dear Future Designer. So if you're a designer, if you're a creative, you might enjoy this. And let's get into it. So as I said, I'm an industrial designer at Teague. Teague is one of the oldest industrial design consultancies in the world, if not the oldest. We've been around for almost 100 years. We're based in Seattle across multiple offices in the Pacific Northwest. One of the things that's exciting about Teague is that we make things. We make a lot of things. We do a lot of thinking through making. We have one of the largest build facilities in the West Coast, which we're really proud of. And for me, particularly, that's one of the most exciting things of working at Teague, not just making concepts, but we make things real. Other than that, my relationship with design goes beyond just working as an industrial designer. I'm the founder of Young Designers India, which is a community of over 10,000 designers, Indian designers across the world. These are people from all different walks of life who are working in all different fields of design. And they've all come together on this sort of like online platform where they can share ideas, learn from each other. As a part of that, we host meetups, we host events, we provide casual to formal mentorship and job opportunities. And that's been really interesting, sort of, being close to the community, close to my people, and seeing what their struggles are, what their challenges are, and what their successes look like. So that's a little bit about me. I mentioned living and working all across the world. That's been majority of, how my design thoughts and culture thoughts have been shaped. I was born in India, studied in India, but even in India, there were multiple paths from north to the middle, sort of Midwest. Middle East of India, and then I lived in Hong Kong for a bit, then moved to Europe, and then completing the circuit by moving to the US. That's where I'm based now, to the far west at Teague in Seattle. But through all of this, like one of the things that I keep thinking about is why I design, and it's the ability to influence culture. I love this picture from Hong Kong, where in the midst of this sort of raw, grungy street, there's this clean, minimal, hyper-designed sort of coffee shop. This is called Knock, by the way. It's a super, super awesome coffee shop. But I love the juxtaposition of having something clean and minimal sort of rest in between something that's really raw. And this is intentional. Like you get to intentionally craft experiences. Somebody actually made these choices while designing the coffee shop. That's one of the things that gets me particularly excited about design. To dive a little bit deeper, I've done all sorts of stuff from audio equipment to baby furniture to consumer tech devices. And then more recently, I've been involved with a couple of really awesome programs. On the left is a smart calculator for Indian shopkeepers, and I'll get into that a little bit later. Then on the top right is a VR, AR headset that we're building at Teague for a company called Wiser. And then on the bottom right is a project that we did last year at Teague, which again speaks to how we start conversations in the space industry by making a speculative project. So this was basically a lunar habitat for life beyond planet Earth. and a lot of the thinking is research backed, but a lot of the result is very provocative, intentionally so, to start conversations around design and UX in space. So you can kind of see the breadth of work as well as the experiences of that kind of define what I'm going to talk about next. Other than my actual work, there's a vault of experiments which I'll get into. I've done all sorts of things, from starting a podcast to starting a newsletter. It's called Designing Near Future. You guys are, should feel free to check it out. I've dabbled into making my own products. I've dabbled into softwares. Things that get me really excited is visuals and renderings and CGI in general. I use Blender a lot, and that's always been exciting to push the limits of what tools can do or what software tools can do. So through my inspiration, people that I look up to, through my experiments that you just saw, and through my opinions that I have around design, and through the different cultural experiences I've had, these have led to some learnings. And I didn't know what the best way to package all of that is. So for now, it is a letter. It is a letter that's titled Dear Future Designer. And in some ways, this letter of learnings is for myself, and is for my future self, me designing in the future. So I think one thing we should really understand is, why is this letter important? Why are you guys here, right? And why should you listen to me? People who have been in the industry for long have probably heard this statement many times: design is changing. But this time, it really is changing. Big studios like IDEO, the champions of design, they had a massive layoff. They shut down 32 of their studios and had to reduce 32% of their staff all across the world, which is a big deal, because they are supposed to be the champions of design. The State of UX report that came out in 2024 actually titled themselves Enter Late Stage UX, which is hinting towards the death of UX. Now, a lot of these are also titles that get people to click on it, but in reality, if you actually read the stats, you'll realize why some of this is actually concerning. Then on the left is an article from Fast Company that talks about the big design freakout. They actually put out 2 articles that speak to how senior executives in the design and creative industry are actually finding a hard time to justify their value and to get a job in the current climate. And all of that is concerning, but that could also be just the way these articles are written. This could be an interpretation from an author or a journalist. But if you look at the stats, jobs, particularly in UX, are declining. We had this boost right after COVID, but now we have gone down to like pre-COVID times, which is concerning for people specifically in UX and specifically in Western markets like the US and UK. I don't have stats for all different industries, but knowing from my friends in the Bay Area, there's still a lot of fear around being laid off as a designer, or around justifying your value as a designer. But in all of this, I think what's really exciting is that with the current climate, this has led to a new type of designer. I will call them the new age creative. Let's look into what the new age creative is. Firstly, this stat is really interesting. 64 million Americans freelanced in 2023, last year, which is 38% of the US workforce. The interesting thing is that the arts and design industry has the highest proportion of freelance workers in the US, with around 3 in 4 people self-employed, which is insane. 3 in 4 people in arts and design industry are self-employed. And this was a research done across, I think, like 6,000 or 8,000 sample size via Upwork, which is one of the largest freelancing platforms in the world. And this is not just a stat that's telling the story. If you look at some highlights, there is a person named Brett, who's the founder of Design Joy, a business that tackles the digital side of design, from web design, product design, UI, UX. It's a one-person business that's run on a subscription model that generates $1.2 million a year. This sort of revenue is actually more in line with a team of 6 or a team of 10 people, or a team of 20 people in some parts of the world. But now with current tools, current sort of climate, more and more people are leaning into solopreneurship. There's another story. Everybody knows this guy, Mr. Beast. He has one of the largest YouTube channels in the world. But other than that, he has also built a chocolate brand, a burger chain across the US. And I was just snooping around his, his job board. It looks like the top 3 positions that he's hiring for. This was actually from last month. He's hiring for creatives, actually, which is really interesting. Most designers, when they're in school, they don't necessarily think about working with Mr. Beast or for Mr. Beast. But for me, this is insane that a lot of future designers will have opportunities like this. And I'm just here to make you aware that your standard path of getting into a design studio, you want to challenge some of that. You might want to take the road not taken. Mr. Beast has also turned down a $1 billion deal for all his assets, which is very interesting. Currently, estimated value of this guy is and his empire is around 500 million. Just speaks to the power of what one person can do. And now they're getting into designing their own products, which is absolutely insane. This is Kendall Jenner's brand, 818 Tequila. And one of the things that really excited me about this is, of course, it's a creator-led brand. But if you look at the bottle design on the left, that seems intentionally designed. Somebody designed it. When I looked a little bit deeper, the branding was done by a studio in the UK, but the bottle design was actually done through artisans in Mexico, which is very, very interesting. Not many designers think about working for Kendall Jenner's tequila brand. So just something to think about for future designers would be, how do you break free from the market that that most people strive to be in, and how do you find opportunities like entrepreneurs? Should be looking into freelancing or entrepreneurship. What happened because of the mass layoffs in the last 2 years is that a lot of the middle management got wiped out. So if you're a designer who has a job currently, it's actually a good time for you because because the middle management is wiped out, you'll have greater visibility. And second, you'll have more accountability. You'll actually be doing more work to fill in that gap. So we don't know how the market trends are going to go, and if we'll see a boost in design hiring. But for now, it's exciting to think about the opportunity that it presents for individual contributors. Now, while design is ever evolving, most designers resist change. And in some ways, we all resist change. I think I resist change as well. A lot of old practices are still in play, and they'll probably will be, because it leads to a consistent expected result. But I personally think like designers can go beyond that. And that's why this letter is important. This letter is for you who lives in this world of this sort of, this duality of feeling okay with being a designer, and then on the other end, just knowing that, oh man, I still have to communicate my value. I still have to fight for my skills and the work that I do. So I've split this letter into 5 chapters. I'll go through them one by one. You'll see glimpses of my work, what I'm doing to tackle some of these concerns, and what I'm doing to become the new age creative. And through that, I hope that I can inspire you as well as challenge you to think about the future of being a designer, so that you're not following somebody else's path, but carving your own. All right, so the first one, the problem with problem solving. This is actually some commentary on the definition of design. For the longest time in design school, I was told that design is problem solving. When you think a little bit deeper, isn't everything problem solving? Engineering is also problem solving. Doctors do solve problems, hard problems every day. So I started to look back at my life, and then early on in my college, I used to do a lot of artworks for bands. Ever since I learned Photoshop, it was sort of a medium for me to, tell stories, express myself, express the band's stories in their artworks. And I used to work for a lot of like metal bands. Eventually, I found my own style. Eventually, I also found what gets people to click on an artwork to listen to new music. And then it ultimately, like, it was, looking back, it was probably one of the most exciting parts of my life, just telling stories. And I do that through my music as well. I mentioned that I'm a musician earlier on, and I still do it when I find time. I put a bunch of music out, and the idea is that I want to tell stories through different art forms. And even, like, you can look at music as a design process as well, right? You iterate a lot, and then you sort of compile it into something that you're really proud of, that and again, it's designed for the listener's ears. And I thought, like, music and storytelling kind of go hand in hand. And this was reinforced when I moved to Astro Studios, my first job out of school. A lot of the work there was hard industrial design, but it was so rooted in brand and narrative. And the most exciting thing to me was how we would share this design work, or how we would talk about our work. It's the power of storytelling at display. For example, this product or this range of products called the WD Black, they made a range of hard drives. And if you notice, the mil spec aesthetic, that sort of shipping container like aesthetic, is actually intentional. We use the analogy of storing something in a shipping container and take that to the digital world. What is storage of data? Like, can we make a analogy there with the physical world? And then even in the branding, you'll see that the underscore is a indicator and a sort of nod towards the digital world of coding. How you'll have the blinking sort of cursor waiting for the next thing that you type. So a lot of these cues and a lot of these stories, they have this poetic meaning to it. In a lot of ways, hard drives don't need to be redesigned. It is a technical object that's built to solve a purpose, and we have so many hard drives out there. So when I look back at art, music, and design, one of the common themes I find is that design, to me, or the creative practice to me, is all about storytelling. But isn't storytelling kind of generic as well? A lot of people storytell, like in a conversation, we're just storytelling. So it doesn't feel as defined. So I went a step deeper and looked at the things that inspire me. Brands like IKEA, Apple, Teenage Engineering, all really high up there. Why do people love them? Why are people big fans of these products? I would argue and say that a lot of these products, in terms of their geometry and in terms of what they do, there are a lot of competitors that do the same thing. But why do people still crave for these particular brands? I think the reason is that these guys are really good at building worlds around their products. They not only make products, but they build this sort of atmosphere for their product to really shine. And that's really exciting to me. And that also happens in the digital world. Brands like Airbnb, Netflix, and Duolingo, even though there's so many competitors out there for what these products do, they still shine because they've built this world around them that you get absorbed in. So for now, I resonate with design is world building a lot more than design is problem solving or storytelling. In some ways, the idea of world building kind of breaks free from the idea of always having to solve problems. No, I think you will solve problems regardless. In fact, like, that's how you should start. But to take it a step further, the new age creative will have to think about world building. The most impactful movies in the world, they are able to craft worlds that people just cannot forget. If anybody has seen the latest Dune, the screenshot might feel so out of place if you haven't, but just if you watch the movie, you'd know how every piece is super detailed, and then the idea of creating worlds really shines through in this particular art form, film. There are also brands that literally stand for building worlds. Lego, for example. Both figuratively and physically, you're building worlds. And that's what I try to do in my practice as well, with a lot of projects that sometimes live only digitally, sometimes physically. I tried to build worlds and imagine products that that I want to sort of interact with, or that I want in my life. And sometimes these break the rules of what a product should be. For example, this headphone that I did, but I would take it to a point that I can get people inspired, I can get myself inspired. You don't necessarily have to do that through renderings. I think the new age, or through design, the new age creative would have to look at the narrative, the story, the animations, the branding, the words they use, the website design they sort of put their work on, the colors, the materials, everything beyond just the design of the geometry. One of the projects that I want to talk about today is DEETS. DEETS is a personal project where I take sort of inspiration from the world of art and photography, and then translate that to sort of these visuals and renderings that remind you of industrial design objects, but they're not necessarily industrial design. I think you'll see that in a second. But essentially, what I'm trying to do is be a bit provocative, learn from the principles of different art forms, and implement that in my design practice. What it led to is a series of visuals and renderings that were then compiled in a magazine called DEETS. As an industrial designer, I don't know if a lot of people are looking at making magazines, but I think we need to break these rules, and we need to build the worlds that we want to live in. For me, at that moment in time, the idea of having visual poetry was really powerful. I not only made the renderings, but also compiled them with some words that I'd written, and then the words and the poetry just sort of guided the viewer through the artwork, thereby making the process a bit more intentional. I sent this off to my friends. There was a lot of buzz around it, especially online in my own community, as well as in my friends' network. And somehow I just become the DEETS guy, which was again, I built a world around just visuals and renderings, and it was a world of DEETS. We're trying to do the same at Teague as well. There's a client that we have called Wiser. They are imagining a world where VR doesn't have to be, or VR headsets doesn't have to be big and bulky. We are imagining a world where everybody should be proud to wear a VR headset and not look stupid. And as a part of that promise, we're imagining different ways where we can shrink down the form factor, plus give people the gift of this, the sort of the different sort of the gift of entering a different portal whenever they need. And for that, you need to build a world where smaller form factor headsets should exist. Now, looking back, I think what I'm talking about is a designer needs to do a lot more. They need to do storytelling, art, engineering. In fact, like I've done a little bit of that, poetry, marketing. You need to know psychology. And all of that is a part of world building. But that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to say that every designer should look at design as world building. I want the future of design and the future designers to think about what design means to you. You need to find your truth. And once you do, then you need to constantly strive to achieve that. All right, second chapter, trading your tools of trade. One of the interesting observations that many designers after a few years in their practice make is that most products tend to look or feel similar, especially when the market is not necessarily taking a lot of risks. They're just following each other. And I think the car industry, the general commuter car industry, is a victim of that mentality, where everything kind of feels similar, and maybe only a couple of details are changed every year. A new car body needs to be revamped, but they all end up looking a little bit generic when you all kind of squint your eyes. And I personally think the problem is consumption. Most people think the problem is process. You'll have some input, the designers will come in together, swarm some ideas. In the process part of it, they look at different tools and frameworks and effort. Most people think that because the tools and frameworks and processes are the same, the output is the same. But I am here to propose that the bigger culprit in all of this is the input, which is what design is bringing at the start of the process. So passion from people, inspiration, people that you look up to or work that you look up to, intuition, a lot of that is built through lived experience. And intuition is actually one of the most human things to exist. It's so varied across people. I want to share a story where the input, the inspiration mattered a lot. I was working for a project that was called the Vocal Erupt, which is a pair of headphones that's designed for gamers, but it was done by a company that's well known in the audiophile community. It was called the Erupt. The idea of sound erupting was more of a marketing play, was a little bit of an analogy, but I used that a little bit. A little bit too much because I think the story of erupting sound is really, really interesting. Can we combine this idea with something else? Can we use the narrative and the power of storytelling to go a step deeper? Parallel to that, having dabbled in a little bit of games, I took a lot of inspiration from these sort of mouse tracking data sheets. This is essentially, as if there's gamers on the call, you'll be familiar with these sort of visuals, which is essentially mouse tracking as you're playing games. It just records the movement around as you're moving your mouse and keyboards. And I use that sort of visual, that sort of input, that sort of inspiration to then have glimpses of in a product, which is interesting, which I think a lot of designers do today, but they don't necessarily take the step forward of actually making something unique. And I want to encourage the future designer to start to think about different sorts of inspirations, things that go beyond other design products or beyond other fields of design. Think about where you can leverage inspiration from. Is it different art forms, different industries altogether, different people? It basically led to this sort of unique grill pattern on the headphone, which again is a little bit dynamic. Kind of forced me to use a program called Grasshopper that many architects on the talk would probably know about. Industrial designers also know about it. It kind of scares them because there's a little bit of visual coding going on. But you'll see that the glimpses of erupting are also transferred towards the headband as well as the yoke. And the idea being that we should double down on this analogy and create something truly, truly unique that resonates with our audience. And that only happened because of the stuff that we were consuming. Making this geometry is not the hardest part, but thinking about it or coming up with ideas like this is usually the difference. Eventually, this headset was made. It sold in very small numbers, given the size of the company, which was just 2 people. But even then, it still remains sort of almost like a legend cult classic, which I was really proud of. Exciting times. This was done in 2019, or actually 18. So what I'm trying to say is that we need to constantly think about the input, because in today's world, as tools are becoming better, as AI, multimodal AI comes in, the thinking process is going to get shorter and shorter. Not that it should, but humans will be making faster decisions just because the tools allow them to. Eventually, the design process will have you going from consuming more, and then there's this layer of thinking, whether that's human or AI. I'm not going to comment on AI, but whatever that layer is, that's going to do a lot of the thinking. And that leads to validation, right? You want to fail fast and fail quickly, and you'll want to repeat the cycle again and again. It always comes back to what are you consuming? What are you feeding in to your own brain and to the AI brain or whatever that brain may be? So my advice to future designers is consume wisely. We all kind of consume very similarly on Pinterest and whatnot to stand out. Stop thinking about the process too much. Start thinking about what you're consuming. All right, chapter 3. Ideas on spreading ideas. For the longest time, the designer's desk has looked like this. A bunch of images, a lot of craft paper, a lot of sketches, a lot of Copic markers, inspiration on the wall, sketches on the wall. And that's exciting. That's exciting to a lot of people. That was exciting to me when I was in design college. Even today in a design studio, something like this really inspires any creative. For the longest time, the designer has thought about themselves as the builder. I'm going to challenge that and say that the designer of the future will need to start to look at their job as a distributor as well. To build a world you want to live in, your ideas need to spread. Ultimately, your ideas are only as good as their distribution. But to make the world listen to you, you need to have ideas worth spreading. You can kind of see the catch 22 situation here. You need to have ideas worth spreading for people to listen to you. But if you want to live in a world that you really want to, your ideas do need to spread. Now, I don't have a sort of a guiding principle here. I'm trying to still figure out how do I make the shift from a builder to a distributor? Do I find a balance? Do I lean one way or the other? One of the things that I'm doing is I've started a newsletter. It's called Designing Near Future, where as a part of an exercise, I try to look at what's happening in the industry. I give some commentary on it, very resource backed, very stats backed, very research backed, and then try to come up with some ideas of how to tackle it or how to think about it. This newsletter has grown from, in the first few weeks from 100 people to now almost 2,000 subscribers, which is interesting. I don't know if a lot of industrial designers have newsletters. I know of maybe 3 who do. So think about it as you move forward. What is that medium of sharing your ideas? One of the examples here that I want to talk about is a newsletter article I wrote about a few months ago. It basically was commentary on why we're falling back in love with clear tech, which is the idea of using clear polycarbonate and providing a window into devices. And this is an observation I made just based on the stuff I was consuming. There are a lot of products now are looking at this clear polycarbonate. It's a trend from early 2000s that's kind of coming back. On Reddit, somebody actually read this article and pretty much dropped the same post without crediting me. It's one of the most it's actually probably the top viewed post on the industrial design subreddit. I was actually furious because I didn't get any credit, but shortly after, Fast Company, one of the major publications, republished this article, then sharing it with millions of their viewers. Which was really interesting to me, the power of having your ideas start in a small niche blog and then go into a large sort of mass distributed platform. And everything I've done from my end is to optimize for distribution, for other people to find my ideas. That benefits if you guys have a job, or like if you guys have a full-time position, that benefits them as well, because through your visibility, they can find people can find that actual company that you work for. If you're a freelancer, individual entrepreneur, it definitely benefits you to put your ideas out there. Now, I don't have a suggestion here. This is my attempt to be heard, to have my ideas be distributed. I highly encourage future designers to think about distribution, because unexpected things happen when you unconditionally put your work online. This is a rendering I probably did like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, something like that. It's a guitar pedal that I was imagining. Again, there's no reality to it. Like in reality, this would be a failed concept because of so many open sort of vents and holes, right? And then an exposed PCB. But that didn't matter. Somebody took that idea, somebody I did not know, a stranger, who then actually built from that render a unique guitar pedal of their own. And that's super interesting to me. It just shows you the power of unconditionally putting your ideas out there. And that project since then has led to a series of experiments, just redesigning and rethinking the guitar pedal, from the knobs to the chassis to how things are built. Led to this sort of hypothetical brand that I'm building. It's called Vertically. The whole idea is that we want to vertically lift up the pedal industry. Again, it kind of ties back to this whole idea of world building. Can we build worlds that I want to live in, that you guys want to live in? I strongly believe that passion projects done passionately will propel any designer further. Not many designers do that because they're so tied to what's happening at their day job or in their college. One of the projects that I was able to cook up just moonlighting a little bit was a bottle opener. It's a simple, clean, artistic object. It's called X and O, and it speaks to the relationship between the shape of the bottle opener and the bottle cap, which are creating X and the O. Uh, I think that sort of simple idea or that simple project speaks a lot to people who strive for stories. I think looking at products that look the same, or like people are constantly bombarded with information that's very similar to each other, you can stand out by telling stories that are so drastically different. And I think that's what I try to do in this project, where again, this is it's not hard to manufacture this. It's not hard to imagine something like this. It's the idea of how do you talk about it, how do you share it, what is the story behind your product. I've got two more chapters to go. I'll go quickly through these. This is number 4, shaped by culture, shaped for culture. This is inspired by finding your own community and finding your own tribe. As you learned earlier, that I have this sort of a duality in my design practice. I was born in the East, but practiced design in the West. And that has led to some interesting learnings. Even in India, even in the East, I was born in Jammu and Kashmir, which is the northmost state in the country. And then currently, the home where my dad lives and where we have a base is in Mumbai, which is a very sort of modern metro city towards the middle to south of India. When I moved to Hong Kong, I learned the differences in culture very quickly. There were a lot of Caucasian people designing for the Asian market, which was interesting to me. One of my first projects was these high chairs. Again, there's a lot of benefits to having high chairs, especially if you're sitting higher up. You're a little bit more attentive. People who come up to your desk who are standing, you have the same level of eye contact. But the problem was it was designed for the Asian market. And when you look at the demographic and when you look at the physical sort of dimensions of your 95 percentiles, you notice that Asians are far shorter than Caucasians. So they actually struggled to get onto these chairs in the first place. And it was always so uncomfortable to watch them, especially the shorter people, get on top of these chairs. So I spent like the next 6 months solving that problem. But one of the key learnings for me is how culture is such an interesting factor in design practices. Not just designing for culture and demographics and like different body shapes and sizes, but just the idea of, is it acceptable, is it not, do people want this, do people not, how do people perceive an object like such in this case. Do people get scared to actually then go on top of these chairs just based on how tall they are? That could be true, that could be a reality. One story I want to share of this guy, Praveen Mishra. He reached out to me to design a smart calculator. He's 22 years old, an entrepreneur based in Bangalore in India. And his vision is to streamline bookkeeping for shopkeepers in India. He realized that in India, and this might be, interesting for people who are not from India, he realized a lot of people just use physical calculators. They don't use their cell phones. They don't use big POS machines. They just use their calculators to do calculations on the fly, and then just share what the price is, and they get paid in cash. This is majority of the small time businesses in India. This is how they do business. And he wanted to imagine a way for the calculator to become smarter so that it can connect with your cell phone, so that you can record every transaction. And all that was needed was just a sales and expenses button. So that's what we led with, which is redesigning what he had to a more desirable product. The key read still needs to be the number, the actual bill. But then the other two buttons were sales and expenses. As in any typical design process, we start sketching, generating a lot of ideas, showing a bunch of inspiration. One of the most interesting things to me was how this company, Two Hands, they took the design sketches to the users, to the future users, to ask them of their opinion. Now, I understand we shouldn't design by committee, right? Like, this is the intention wasn't to just implement everything that they say or for them to pick the best option. I think the intent there was to see if we missed out on anything. What are people talking about? What are the stories that they're talking? Can they imagine themselves with any of these products? And based on that feedback, we were able to develop a smart calculator, which again reminds you of an actual calculator, very intentionally so, because we didn't want to scare away those customers who are so used to the physical calculator. I had to let go of a lot of the Western design principles of making something clean and minimal, and really look at big, bold graphics, because you're tackling an audience that is maybe on the older side. They want to make sure that all digits are clearly visible. They might even have eyesight limitations, right? Their vision might not be perfect. So everything just needed to get bolder and bigger, as opposed to what I've learned in the West, where it's all about clean, minimal form factors and clean, minimal typography. This is one of the most interesting parts of the process for me. It challenged my idea of what it means to design, and it challenged my idea of following the design process that was so deeply embedded in me. I needed to change, and I needed to challenge myself to go beyond, sort of these inbuilt rules that I had in my head. And I think it led to a lot of growth for me to think about designing for India, designing for a startup, designing for someone who's 22 years old, has the passion, and really wants to solve the problem. A typical design process then led to DFM, and one of the key challenges, or the big challenges, was also making it super cheap to manufacture, which then, the idea was that it becomes easily accessible to a large market. This is something that people designing in the East will often sort of struggle with, or they'll be challenged by, which is designing objects in a very limited budget range. And that's I think that's a key part of design. But if you are in a part of the world where people have a lot of disposable income, it's not as big an issue, and especially if you're designing objects that are in that premium to luxury category. So everything I learned, I had to sort of unlearn and wrestle with in my head, just designing for India, designing for this particular use case. But as a result of that, these guys ended up on Shark Tank. There is a lot of money for manufacturing this device. The product was shown on TV to millions of people, which was really awesome. I am personally super glad for their success. And personally, for me, it was a big win to see something that I designed on the television. In all of this, the one thing that still resonates with me a lot is the power to influence culture. I said that in the start, and I say it again. The reason I design is to influence culture and tip it in a meaningful direction. We as designers need to realize that the responsibility in our hands is much larger than we are led to believe in. Now, for Praveen and his team, they get to influence the culture of bookkeeping in India. For me, I get to really think about designing experiences and objects for my home. So here's a tip for future designers: embrace culture as much as you embrace technology. It's easy to get lost in a world where technology moves so quickly and so fast. Don't forget that the human element is still culture. Here's the last one. This is going to be a short one. To whom we belong and who belong to us. This is about finding your tribe, your people. If you don't like the world, change it. This is the one message that I want to leave you behind with. That's what I try to do with Young Designers India. I mentioned it's a community of 10,000 designers, Indian designers, working all across the world or studying all across the world. one of the things that I learned while building this community is, that so many people struggle in their creative careers early on in their journey. In fact, a lot of senior people struggle as well, but like early on the journey, like your experiences could really define which way you lean in your career. And it could also lead to a bad experience. A lot of people have shitty internship experiences in the start, and that sort of alters their idea of design. We built this to sort of bridge the gap between the students and the industry, or like education and industry. But our goal has become much bigger, to a point that we have become the largest support network for designers in the country. As a part of that, we host meetups all across the world, from Mumbai to New York, from Bangalore to Singapore. We've also done London. Funnily enough, we're coming back to New York. We're completely sold out. But one of the things that gets me excited about all of this is that I get to meet people like you on the call, and I get to hear your stories, successes, and challenges. I am a bit more prepared. I'm a bit more informed. I'm a bit more inspired every time that I get to work and meet people like you. So a lot of people ask me how I built this. There's the thing I keep telling them that is that I did not know how to build a community. I was trained as an industrial designer, not as a community builder. I'm not the best with softwares or technical coding, so I naturally tried to find ways online of how to build this without going through 5 years of study. The message that I want to deliver is that don't learn to build, just build to learn. A lot of designers think that they can study and then implement that into their design, but I want to challenge that by saying that the act of designing itself is learning, and it's going to propel you further. All right, so the new age creative, that's really it about that. I want to read this last blurb for you as a means to inspire you and the future me. This is still a work in progress, but I do have to wrap this up. So the industry likes to box you into a mold. Dear future designer, I hope you can break free from it. I hope you see the world in your own unique ways and share it with people who can see it. I wish you embrace culture as much as you embrace technology. I hope you find friends and mentors that challenge you. Self-expression and self-expansion will take you further than anything your creative career throws at you. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope this was helpful.
Thank you, Sushant. It was an amazing talk and a presentation. I think myself and all the people that are listening probably got something inspiring out of it, from the beginning of the world building to the storytelling, to sort of inspiring to become more and excel in different things and find different people and different opportunities within this whole design world. So we want to jump into a little bit of a question and answers. So for the people that are in the call, if you have any questions, please do write them down on here on the live chat or in Instagram, and we'll be answering them. So first, let's start from a question from Akash. He says, you talk about the need for future designers to carve out their own individual paths and roles in design. If you had to start from scratch today as a young aspiring creative, where would you begin, and how would you carve out the path in design? What tools, trends, and technologies would you exploit?
I think that's a pretty loaded question. I've thought about this as well. If I were to start again now in 2024, what I would do, I think the first thing for me is to make sure that I'm spending enough time doing my own passion projects to really understand what do I really like. A lot of people in schools and colleges, their portfolios end up being a collage of their college projects. So if you're somebody who's early in their career, I would imagine that you're working towards your portfolio, or you're working towards becoming a professional. One thing I would encourage you to do is a lot of passion projects. And the caveat or the asterisk there is that don't let your passion projects die out with just sketches and renderings or visuals. Try and build them. try and build them. Travel to places, find vendors who can actually build stuff, find people who can help support the next step of design, which is just going to give you so much insight into what it takes to build something. Now, I'm speaking to industrial designers and product designers, but the same applies to UXers and UI designers and web designers. If you can take a step forward from your concept to actually building something and putting it out there for the people, that's going to lead to so many learnings. In terms of technologies, I hate to prescribe anything. I would say the internet is a free resource. Do whatever it takes to get your product or solution or experience out there. The best learning you'll have is from people directly interacting with it, as opposed to looking online for feedback or whatever. So that's my general advice. Build things a lot more than the colleges allow you to do or push you to do, and yeah, get it in hands of people to get real feedback.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that actually having that feeling of having the actual product in your hand, even if it's just a prototype, sometimes is it's a really it's a moment of awe, when the product finally becomes a physical object. And yeah, I completely agree. But I also have to, I think, add like in what you said is just that I think these sort of experiences that you gain by traveling also shape the way that you actually design and create. And not only, I think we speak from a designer's point of view, industrial designer's point of view, but like you said, it applies to many other different type of careers, marketing and UX, UI, and graphic itself. So experiences are the things that shape us, I think. We have another question from Country Raptor. He says, "How do you feel about safeguarding design, also being able to distribute and put yourself out there?"
I think it's they're talking about when because I talked about distribution. So when you put your design out there, how do you save those ideas from being stolen or from them
Yeah, I
to be
believe so.
copied?
Mm.
Funnily enough, I've never thought about it. But there was one time I was gaining some traction on social media, and because of that, it led to a lot of inspired pieces. And one thing that I tried to do is I started to throw like Easter eggs in there that I knew were intentionally wrong, and they were intentionally illogical. And if I ever saw something like that repeated, I knew that that person has just copied.
You're doing the whole casetify thing that just happened.
Exactly. Like if you leave Easter eggs and if somebody's blatantly copying it, you can instantly catch them,
Yeah.
potentially sue them as well, knowing that your intentional or your intellectual property was, hijacked. Two things here for younger designers: don't hold your designs and ideas close to you. If you believe that you have something that's groundbreaking, then definitely don't put it online. Work till it's finished, protect it by all means. The reality is that design patents are really easy to navigate around. Intellectual property patents or other types of patents may not be as much, but trademarks in general are very easy to sort of maneuver around. That's why you see a lot of fakes and dupes around in the world. Nobody is immune from it. Large companies like Apple, Nike, they all get copied. I would say don't let that fear hold you back from the benefits that it brings, because they will far outweigh the chance that what if somebody else copies it. If you're trying to do something for money, if you're trying to do something for it's a business idea that you really want to capitalize on, at some point or the other you'll have to put it out for people to see. And you can either build in public, which there's a risk that other people might pick up that idea, do it better and faster than you, uh, or you can just hold on to it, wait for it to be completely finished, and then put it out there. But either way, you're sharing it with the world.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I learned actually while I was working in China was this sort of speed that products get developed on, and an important factor of it was that you should always be ahead of what your competition is making. So when you are making version one and you're putting out version one, and they are copying version one, you should already be thinking and
Yeah.
developing and creating version two. So the idea is to always stay ahead of the actual market itself, you know. And at least that's my experience that I was able to get while working. Um, let's jump into another question. This is a bit of a question going into the actual talk, and it's a funny one. It's, have you ever incorporated elements of mythology or folklore into your designs? If so, how? And this is taken into the whole point of the world building and storytelling.
Um, Not in my industrial design practice, but I do. If people remember earlier on, I shared a lot of artworks and stuff. It was often that bands and musicians would come back to me with, sort of what inspires their story, and a lot of the music is inspired by mythology, folklore. Some of the music is even religious, right? Like, and you have to find creative ways of sort of sharing that story with the world. So I think in graphics and art it's a lot more easier. I've definitely shared some insane stories. Like some of the music that I've made artwork for, it's just, yeah, when I look back, I'm like, man, people come up with like really crazy stuff. One of the artworks that I did, uh, they talked about if planet Earth was all aliens and all the other planets were just humans, how would you represent that story? Uh, so where basically you are the one in majority, and then, yeah, like right now we think that there's other life forms. It's like, what is that? Where you're just yeah, I don't know. Anyway, it's a super complex problem to think about. Maybe not,
Sure.
it doesn't have a physical form factor or like a visual in your head, but these are the themes that you'll then start to think about. Okay, how do I juggle different elements of the story?
Yeah, of course. It's difficult to sort of gather this culture and folklore and stories of the past and make it into an actual product. Sometimes the graphic side is a bit more flexible in that sense. The paper can always hold everything, while a physical product needs to properly be manufactured, and it has its caveats, you know. Let me ask you something interesting though. Um, this whole topic of finding new opportunities, like for example the examples that you're proposing with Mr. Beast and Kylie Jenner and all these things, how do you think that that's going to evolve the actual market of design? Do you think that is just another opportunity, or is it going to completely consume the market of the studios? Because for example, um, the studios are losing a lot of work, like you were saying, and they're laying off a lot of people. A lot of big tech companies are laying off. So, and most of the young kids want to be YouTubers and Instagrammers. Is that where we're going as a career? Is that sort of our new opportunity to find this new age creative that you were mentioning?
I think this is, we're sort of in between that, um, where now we're working for creators and distributors, like individual designers are working for them or design studios are working for them. But in the future, the designers themselves will be creators and distributors. It'll be easier to build audiences because in our sort of arsenal of tools, one of the things that's really important is uh, the way we talk about our ideas and the way we communicate, right? And that's what creators do as well. They tell stories. They either make shareable content, valuable content, or education, or, you know, basically just it all comes down to, can they entertain us? And designers do that all the time, especially when we're sharing concepts or ideas and even putting out stuff in the world. So I think in the future, the designer themselves will be the creator. They will be the Kendall Jenners of the world, and they will be the Mr. Beast of the world. For now, because these guys have the audience, um, they're the ones trying to put more value or provide more value to these people. In some cases, designers also have to juggle between, like, is it real value or am I just making junk? But the power of audience is validated today, and in the future, designers will then make the leap. And I think the one thing I want to add here is that, where technologies like AI, 3D printing, and sort of just the supply chain becoming a bit more efficient, it's going to be easier to produce work, or it's going to be easier for product designers to actually put stuff out there by themselves, as opposed to having gigantic budgets for tooling and whatnot. So it's going to be a bit more accessible for designers like you and I and people on the call to just go out there and try a proof of concept and actually build the thing by yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think prototyping in itself is becoming very accessible to everybody. I mean, most universities have a 3D printer nowadays, and it's very easy to get started in prototyping. And of course, that also means on the other side you need to learn quite well 3D. So it has its balances. But with that, actually, I want to just finish off with one last thing. And of course, although you already gave us some special advice during the talk, I would like to ask you what last advice or last words of advice would you want to give to young designers that are up and coming, that are students about to graduate? Just a few words of advice and inspiration for them.
Um, I I think one of the first things is that as you are listening to me and people at IDES, I would say this is an active act of consumption. Please don't stop doing that. Please listen to a lot more people. Please read a lot, listen to podcasts, whatever it is that your medium of choice is, because no single person holds the source of truth. You'd have to find your own source of truth. You'll have to find what inspires you and who you resonate with. So if you like stuff like this, go ahead and dive deep and read and visit exhibitions and listen to many different sorts of opinions to then inform your own opinion. So that's one. No single talk will give you everything that you need to go forward. Second is to realize that we're all work in progress. You will almost never be feeling complete or you never feel like an expert. And I think that's if you're that kind of person who already feels that they're work in progress, I know that you will excel a lot because you'll always be striving towards self expansion. So, two pieces of advice here: always find people, or always be on the lookout for people and things that inspire you. And second, realize that no matter how far you go ahead to seek inspiration, you're never going to be fully satisfied. And I think that is the fun part about being a designer, because you can keep loading yourself up and your opinions can keep flexing and skewing. Yeah, these are a couple of mindset shifts that helped me. Asking people for help, asking for advice, go and do that, and then knowing that you have to keep doing it no matter how senior you become in your career or how far you're in your career.
That's awesome advice. And just to not leave anybody out, we have one last question to take. This comes from Suhal. I hope I'm not saying that wrong, but he wants to thank you first for the aspiring content, and secondly, he wants to know how do you run out of creative blocks, or how do you get over a creative block?
Pretty simple. Consume more stuff. Look at things that go beyond your expected idea of where you can find inspiration. If you're coming up with ideas, or if you're trying to solve something, there's only two things that will help. One, better defining what you're solving, or better defining that playground is what I call it. Like, let's say if you're designing for something for old people, then you really have to get specific about what is the problem, what products are out there, and so on, and get really specific about what you're solving. And the second is, how do you inspire yourself in that act of solving? And that's the whole idea of consumption. Make sure that you're reading enough, you're listening enough, you're observing enough. Go to actual venues and platforms where you can actually seek inspiration and resources. For me, I think that's the one thing that has led me to be fairly active with all my experiments and side projects, because I've taken a lot. It's almost like I want to then like push all that energy through different projects and different ideas. So if you're running into creative blocks, I think majority of the times, if that happens to me, it's a majority of the times I'm just feeling unstimulated. I would need some stimulation to inspire me. So consume wisely and consume more.
Yep, completely agree. And thank you so much, Sushant. It was a pleasure, a really big pleasure having you here with us. This has been an extremely inspiring conversation, and We hope to bring more people like yourself into this awards, and to remind everybody that on May 24th, it will be this Friday will be the last day for registration and delivery for the contest. The contest does have two big prizes of internships in China and one in Milan. So if you are interested in participating, please do check out our website, idesawards.com. There'll be other prizes also from Keyshot and from Casina. So if you're interested, please do check that out and hurry because the time is finishing. Thank you again, Sushant, for being with us. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you guys, and have a good night.